Good morning. Hi, I'm Frank Messina, and this is the August 13, 2024 meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission. Before we start, we have some announcements that need to be made. Please note, this meeting is being recorded and will be available shortly hereafter for scheduled and on-demand viewing on any smartphone or tablet device. If anyone else is recording the meeting, please notify the chairman. Seeing none. Pursuant to Governor Healy's March 29, 2023, signing of the Acts of 2023, extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, suspending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Law, General Law 30A-20, until March 31st, 2025, this meeting of the Chatham Historical Commission is being conducted in person and via remote participation. Every effort will be made to ensure the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in the order. Reminder that persons who would like to listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by calling the phone number 945-4410, conference ID 824-203-924 #, or join the meeting online via Microsoft Teams through the link in the posted agenda. While this meeting is a live broadcast and simulcast on Chatham TV, despite our best efforts, we may not be able to provide for real-time access. We will post a record of the meeting on the town's website as soon as possible. Thank you very much. First order of business is a roll call. Vice Chair Bob Lear.
Here.
Steve Burlingame, clerk.
Here.
Nancy
Nancy
Barr.
Barr.
Here.
Was that somebody else in the room? Stephanie Hamilton.
Here.
Sandy Porter.
Here.
Janet Tennyson is absent and recovering well from her surgery. Robert Stevens is absent and not calling in. And we have an open position of alternate, second alternate. The chair is here, so we have a quorum, and we will proceed. Ms. Barr was reappointed by the Select Board to the full position now and is a full member as soon as she gets sworn in. So we don't have any significant business, I think, which is going to hold us up, but we do have 5 actually working members, full members of the commission here today, so we should have no problem. Okay, we have a rather light agenda because some things got rescheduled, but let's get right to the minutes, which is the next item on the agenda. You have a minutes of July 23rd, 2024.
I have a correction.
Yes.
The second page under new business, it should be Mr. Dre it says Mr. Draw, or Draw, I can't read it, made a preliminary assessment of each property.
Oh, it's Dre, D-R-E-Y, right?
Yeah.
The second time I put it, I had drawn.
Okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Is that it? Okay. Andy, thank you for capturing a somewhat long and confusing on my part discussion on what our priorities are. Not a comment on them, and we can talk about it later, but I have yet to have a discussion with Ms. Donovan relative to proceeding on the next steps on the Form B. Okay, but we'll talk about that later. All right, so we have no other comments. I have a motion to accept the minutes as modified.
So moved.
Thank you. Second, please.
Second.
Thank you very much. Bob?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Nancy?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thank you very much. Okay. As far as the agenda is concerned, I'd like to note that the first application, which would have been a hefty one, and 75 Hallway Street, which you didn't receive in your packet because the applicant asked for an adjournment or continuance to our next meeting on September 3rd. Apparently, the architect is out of the country, and we should facilitate that. I don't see any reason. But in addition, for the members of the commission, well, they don't have the application, do they?
They do not.
Okay, what I'd like to suggest is that we provide that to them so they can look at it, because I also then provided in the packet Sarah Korjev's comment on the application. We're not going to discuss it now, other than the fact that you have her comments, but I think it's important that they have the application so they know what Sarah's commenting on.
They will get it the prior week of the meeting.
Yeah, okay. So, all right. If anybody has any dire need to see it before the meeting on September 3rd, just get in touch with Christina, and I'm sure she'll find a way.
And Frank
to
will be-
copy or send it to you electronically.
Frank, will we be doing
I'm
a
sorry.
site inspection? Yeah, okay,
The site visit will be the Friday before because of the holiday.
okay, thanks.
Okay? All right, so I need a motion, Mr. Vice Chair, for continuance of the 75 Holloway Street.
I move we continue 75 Holloway Street to September 3rd at the applicant's request.
I second.
Second.
Second, thank you very much. Okay, no other comments? Bob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Steph,
Yes.
Sandy,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay. So having said that, we're down to something close to my heart, 784 Orleans Road, which is to be heard both in Chapter 158 as well as in relation to the Cape Cod Commission Act, as this is part of the National Register District and in fact a contributing structure in the National Register District. And the application is for a structure on the property, and I'll let Mr. Kean introduce himself and talk about what it is you're proposing.
Good morning, Ted Keon, Coastal Resource Director with Chatham. Glad I noticed that I was not necessarily fourth on the agenda after they were postponed. I thought I was going to be a bit longer down the way here. No matter. The three lattice towers, as you folks are well aware, are contributing features to the Marconi Nationally Registered District. The seawardmost, if you will, directly adjacent to the town landing, has been a concern of a number of people over the years because it is quite close to the coastal bank. It is an eroding coastal bank. It's not an excessively rapid rate of erosion, but nonetheless it has receded over the past several years to the point where we're concerned about the structural integrity of the foundations for the tower. We had been developing plans for renovations for the entire landing at Riders Cove, which would be bulkheads, ramp replacement, and a number of other features. As part of that assessment, we had initially considered trying to provide some coastal bank erosion protection, either with a rock revetment, because technically in the regulatory world, we probably could propose that to protect a structure such as the tower. It would not be my preference, so we also had considered some more modest approaches, but nonetheless still addressing the erosion as opposed to the position, if you will, of the tower. We were fortunate that a resident, I believe he's a resident of Brewster, but you, I'm sure, know him well, Bob Nickerson, is actually an engineer and a specialist in lattice towers and their structural integrity, and frankly, the relocation of such structures. He approached us once he was aware of this issue and concern and said, you can protect it in place if you wish, but have you considered moving it? And at that point, or time in history, we had not, because we just thought that would be a big deal. And he says, no, it's actually a very small deal. It's very simple to pick up a tower of that nature and relocate it. So we kind of changed gears in our thinking. Again, I think you know, I know you know, we have CPA funding to address the towers in general for their in situ structural integrity. Terry Whalen, I believe, is on, and he can expand on some of that. But as far as this specific tower, it became very clear to us that relocating it in a modest manner, keeping it somewhat consistent with the original triangular configuration of the original placement would be a preferred way to go. Much less environmental concerns about hardening the shoreline. Frankly, the cost of that was not small. So it turned out that the relocation was definitely the preferred alternative. We have been to the site. We had a site visit yesterday. Terry Whalen, who's been husbanding the overall lattice tower work, as I indicated, he and I kind of looked at where we thought an appropriate place would be. It's about 40 feet inboard of where the current tower sits. It's a good location relative to the topography at that site. There will be some tree removals required in order to get it there, but nonetheless, it seems like a much more modest approach. We're here before you folks because we know the jurisdiction you have for work of this nature, so we're just looking for your thoughts and presumably approval to proceed further in this manner. So.
Thank you. I just want to comment on your application. For some reason, whoever did the application was not aware of the age of the towers. But the towers were built in 1921, which is, you can find listed in the application with the approval of when it was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. So certainly applicable under Chapter 158, it's 103 years old. And more importantly, we're hearing it under two applications under Chapter 158, but more importantly, under the Cape Cod Commission, as this is a contributing structure in the National Register District. And I want to comment, I don't know if you did the application or not, but your comment that while the current structure no longer provides functional communications and use, it's primary ornamental in nature. That really cut me to the quick. I mean, it's a significantly historic structure, and I guess some people can consider it ornamental. The birds do, I guess, but those of us involved with the Marconi consider it more than ornamental. Anyway, I just thought I'd get a couple of dibs in on
Duly
that one.
noted.
But having said that,
Not my words, but duly noted.
having said that, what the commission needs to determine very significantly whether or not we feel this is something, because a relocation is tantamount to a demolition, except we can determine that the change is not considered a substantial alteration in terms of reducing the historical significance as a contributing structure in the National Register District. So that's the jurisdiction that we're going to be talking about. A, Chapter 158, and secondly, is in fact this change constitute a substantial alteration to the National Register District. Having said that, questions from members of the commission? Yes, Steve.
Is there any comprehensive plan? Obviously, the shoreline and its future was up to speculation, I suppose. But is there any long-term review, anticipation of the future for this? I'm concerned that eventually, and we have a long time parking issue down there. Is there any reason the proposed location could be a number of feet to the north, away from the parking area, to create some additional parking?
Where it's being proposed would not, I mean, we have some long-term concerns, and frankly, short-term concerns about parking. We are also in the process of looking at the trailer parking area, where we want to deepen those parking spaces a modest 6 or 8 feet because the trailers are sticking out into the roadway. Where we're proposing to place this tower would have no bearing on that. There is also the possibility, for exactly the same reason, of slightly deepening the single-car spaces where this tower currently is and where it will be once it's been relocated. Once again, where it's being proposed would not impact the ability to do that. The parking area that you may be referring to that had been proposed a few years ago, where we had a much more extensive parking proposal on the upper area. As much as I support that, I am afraid I think that ship has sailed, unfortunately, for those that like to have more parking at that facility. But at this point, I don't think there's any appetite, never say never, but regardless, where the tower is relocated, potentially, presumably, again, would have no bearing on a future proposal for parking in that upper area. They just don't overlap. So I wouldn't be concerned about that.
How about the lower area?
Well, again, the lower areas where we're proposing to do a very modest, indent, if that's the right word, into the banking would not impact where it's being located.
I think,
I would,
sorry, go ahead.
I would think that, the parking situation has been a difficulty for a lot of people. If you took these things independently, let's do the tower, why not do the tower? And then later say, let's add some parking down there. It would seem to me there would be a great deal more clout for you if you were to incorporate those two together with parking in the area of the tower. Look, considering the fact that there's an erosion issue and a danger of losing the tower, not imminent, as you say, but if I were a voter, I am a voter, I'd be more inclined to support the additional parking if it was going to help, if moving the tower was going to help save it. Just a thought, I have no objection to the relocation of the tower, but I'd hate to see an opportunity to address the parking concern just be postponed.
Well, Steve, we're relocating, or at least in my view, we're not going to refer this to the Cape Cod Commission because the tower has potentially a problem in terms of being lost. If we were going to say we're going to relocate the tower for more damn parking spaces, I would refer it to the Cape Cod Commission, and I'm sure the Cape Cod Commission would make a unilateral and tell you no. That's not a reason to relocate or demolish a contributing structure because you want a parking space. Absolutely not. So I think.
I'm just saying, putting them together, I'm not asking to
Let
do
me
it.
finish my point. The point is to relocate it because of more parking is not consistent with historic preservation. Okay, you would not relocate a contributing structure to create a parking lot, A. And B, that, as Ted alluded to, that's a park right now, okay? And we're probably gonna get some pushback because we're encouraging the park. Has it actually been completely dedicated? Well, there's at least 2 or 3 town meeting votes which said this is a park, okay? So not a parking lot. So I think we need to be careful here on how, in my opinion, how we proceed with that.
And just, and maybe I wasn't clear, I understand your point tied together because there's similar areas and so forth, and we are proceeding independently with a project which will require coming back here relative to the larger, deeper spaces for the trailer parking. The single car spaces, which are to the right of the image, we are going to be looking at bumping them in because they really are. When you get a pickup truck, sitting there with a full-size bed, it's in the roadway and it's an issue. Nonetheless, we're not going to add spaces. It just make the current spaces more efficient. And where we place the tower would have no bearing on where we want to go with the modest deepening of those spaces. So it's not adding parking, it's just making those spaces
So
more
the-
efficient. And
So the
that's,
relocation of the tower to the proposed relocation spot will still permit you to
yes,
modestly extend the depth of the single
correct, correct,
parking? Okay, good.
yep.
Okay. Anybody else? Yes, Steph?
I'm just wondering about the old platform. Is that going to remain?
We are going to be presumably flush cutting the tower from the concrete, foundation, leaving the foundations in place to memorialize that site location, if you will. Making sure there's no sharp edges for,
Right.
safety. But no, we are not going to disturb the current site as far as the foundation. We will have to put a new and frankly more extensive foundation for current wind load calculations and so forth. But the existing site will be memorialized in place.
Thank you.
Yes.
How much is it going to cost? The net. You got $98,000, $97,000 that's been sitting around since 2018 to maintain these towers, and none of them have been maintained. There are 3 of them.
Can we focus on historical
But
preservation?
This is
issues
historical
between
preservation, Frank.
What's historical about it? The cost is not an issue for this board to consider. Please, let's focus on.
I still want to know
I-
what
I
it's going to
mean,
cost.
I'm going to have to beg to Terry to weigh in on. He's been working with the engineer for the preservation, which is actually probably going to happen prior to us moving the tower. Timing-wise, it seems like the preservation component is more appropriate to pursue, hopefully this fall. And we
Okay.
have everything, I believe, sufficient funds to do both the preservation as well as the relocation.
But there are 3 towers, so
This is all for all 3.
all 3. Okay, Terry, are you there?
What's your question?
What's it going to cost? What is it going to cost to move that tower?
Cindy, come on.
I want to know,
Cost
Frank.
is not an issue. Let's focus on what we're here for, okay? The cost issue is not an issue as far as this application's concerned.
It becomes an issue to me if all the money goes for the relocation of one tower when the money was set aside by the CPC.
We're not the CPC.
But the point is to maintain these historical towers.
This is not our germane. The restoration of the towers is something the CPC is addressing, not us.
When you get a chance, Terry, shoot me an email.
Suffice to say, the restoration is part of the task that they have to do, yes.
And we have sufficient funds. I've been
Yeah.
assured that, there is sufficient funds to do all 3 tower restorations and relocation. The relocation is actually turning into the cheapest, alternative of what we're doing. It's actually apparently very simple to pick it up and put it down.
Okay, thank you.
One of you two spoke, Steve. Yes, Nancy?
We had asked at the site inspection about the osprey nest that's on top of it, and you had indicated that it was an option to remove it and to build something else somewhere else, or to leave it in. I just wanted to express my opinion about that, which is that I think a win-win for historical and natural resources is something the commission should strive for, or win-wins for any of our applications, and I did not get a sense that the nest on top is significantly impacting the historical integrity of the structure. So I wanted to just express my support for leaving that platform that they are nesting on in place and not going, and not disturbing that any more than it has to be, is my opinion.
And duly noted, as I indicated on the site visit, we're open to whichever. It's been a recurrent nesting area. As we've experienced throughout town, the ospreys like to go where they like to go. Regardless of us sometimes trying to scoot them away, they still come back. So even if we try to put deterrents up there, they may still want to go back there. But we would not do that unless we had an alternative close by site. So for that same group of birds, would they choose the new site over the old site?
Does
I
our
don't-
opinion as the Historical Commission have a influence on
Sure.
whether or not you do that?
Sure, I mean,
So I
the-
would like us to consider that then.
I'm gonna speak out of somewhat off the cuff here.
Okay,
I don't think it matters to us. If you felt that there was an overriding need to remove it because of its potential impact to the structure, we would try to pursue that with the caveat, we'd want an alternative site nearby.
Okay.
If you don't really care, I mean, we could still put an alternative site nearby and see if they like that more or have another one show up. So,
okay, thank you. I would advocate for leaving it there.
Bob, any comments?
Not on that, but the Conservation Commission that's within their jurisdiction to deal with the ospreys, I think.
Yes,
Ted well
thank you very
knows. So,
and to highlight that, also depending on the timing, we would be, cognizant of the timing of it, when the birds may or may not be coming back, when we would want to relocate it. Not that we couldn't potentially do it during that period, but we would definitely be very cognizant of that.
Speaking of other boards that have jurisdiction, in addition to conservation and the birds, et cetera, you have to go to zoning relative to height?
It hasn't been confirmed, but it's my understanding that it's likely we have to go to zoning for certain things that I'm not quite sure of yet. We have to confirm the location that we're proposing is not within a certain setback area from both the roadway as well as the coastal bank. I believe we can meet that without, too much difficulty. If we do have to relocate it even further for the zoning, it would still be very much in that general area.
Thank you. Assuming the board is going to, assume this is not a, okay. Assuming the board is not going to, is going to allow us to proceed and not refer it to the Cape Cod Commission, please make sure I'm aware of if and when it goes to zoning. And, usually with the Historical Commission likes to pipe in if we approve something to let you know, yes, we approve it
Understood.
and why we approve it.
Yep.
So I think we can do that. 1 second, Steve. Is a member out there?
Terry Whalen has his hand raised.
Yes, Terry? Could you introduce
good-
yourself?
Yeah, good morning, Terry Whalen, Projects and Operations Administrator. Just to add on the historic preservation aspect of related to the osprey. So I did bounce the undesirability from a historic preservation standpoint, but he did not foresee any negative impacts for long-term preservation or restoration after the work is completed. So just wanted to add that as well. So like Ted said, depending on, or as the vice chair mentioned, if something comes out of the permitting process, but from a historical preservation standpoint, the preservation professionals did not see any negative impact of the osprey staying in the long term, just basically saying that's a local decision.
Right. Well, I got you, Terry, relative to the issue, and I believe it's in here, in the narrative I read, that you're going to, and unfortunately, my magnifying glass couldn't read the drawing. We have to change our application to say that if an applicant submits something and it's unreadable, even though it's typed, we should make it get a larger copy. Anyway, Terry, if I read the proposed tower lattice relocation, there are notes here relative to how you're doing it, and I assume that means that you're gonna be doing restoration before you move it.
Yeah, well, where we are now with the permitting, and Ted didn't dive into it, but long story short, so, it's kind of six one way, half a dozen the other on restoration and moving. But right now, it looks like we're on a track to doing the restoration. So what you pointed out, the example of the tower, that's an example of what would be in the bid documents for each tower. So essentially, you might have seen some of the early information. We had flown the towers with drones. Basically, all the deficiencies have been identified, mapped. Again, that's an example of the tower to be moved, of all the various notes of specific items, and also there's some general condition items for each tower. So that's really going to be in the bid package for the restoration for the actual repairs. So that's, again, part of that snippet was just shown for that tower. But effectively, all the repairs and restoration items have been noted in great detail, and then there'll be corresponding specifications that are going to be bid. And again, now we do have a follow-up meeting with the structural engineers and the preservation specialists tomorrow, with the outcome of this meeting. But from a construction or implementation sequence, most likely we're going to be going ahead with the restoration efforts in place, and after going through the permitting process, would execute the move. And as Ted mentioned, what's been very interesting in this process, and working very closely with Bob Nickerson on various aspects of tower moving and his expertise, the actual movement is via crane is quite, I don't say simple, but it's pretty easy. And we've been out there with a crane operator. That aspect of it itself would be under $10,000 to just provided the landing location is all set. It's basically a one-day operation to actually just, if you're looking at still at the graphic, in the parking area there, the crane would essentially be in that vicinity, pick it up and move it to the new foundation. And again, it's primarily because these structures are pretty light, under 10,000 pounds, after kind of, let's call it forensic engineering of, since we didn't have any plans of the existing structures, but that's really what would happen in the sequence. And the other two towers would be restored,
Okay.
all as one project. So, but what it's like from a sequencing perspective now, we'll get the restoration completed, and then do the move after. In that we've got some decent track of permitting, and we don't want to hold up the restoration any further.
Okay, great. Well, the purpose of that question relative to the restoration first, before they're moving it, comes when we deal with homes which we're going to be lifting, and all of a sudden, if it's not done properly, all of a sudden the historic home collapses. So we wouldn't want the tower to be lifted and fall apart, while it's being
Right.
lifted. So
We were aware of that fact. And
Say again?
We were aware of that fact, and we're going to, if we didn't do the full restoration, we were going to provide some additional bracing and replacement of anything that needed to be replaced or beefed up, if you will, prior to the move. So we were aware of that concern also.
And that goes to Sandy's point about the restoration, notwithstanding the cost. Thank you very much. Steve, you had another issue you wanted to bring up?
Well, it's not so much another issue. I think the presentation and the discussion has been fine. We've talked anywhere from ospreys to parking to what kind of restoration and when and whatever. But I fully support Sandy's comments about cost. I think the more we know about a situation, the better decision we can make. And if we make it out of context, and cost being part of that context, and what else is going on, and other money that's been proposed for this purpose, I think it's very important that we have an opportunity to consider those things. And
I appreciate
I hate to disagree
I appreciate
with
the
you.
speech you're making, but do you have a point?
Yes, I do.
Good. Thank you very much.
I think as part of our
Okay.
obligations
I got you.
as a commission, that we need to talk about all of the aspects that may have relevance to the situation. And I just want to say that I support
Well, I
Sandy's
appreciate that.
position.
I appreciate that, but I will repeat again, and for my good friend Sandy, we have no authority as it relates to cost.
No,
And we
nor do
should-
we-
Let me finish the point, sir. And we shouldn't be making a decision for historic preservation on cost. That's not our authority. Okay? Enough said. We're going to move on
No,
now.
I fully-
Thank you very
I
much. I think you've spoken enough, Mr. Vice Clerk, okay? I think we got your point, okay? Unless you have something substantial to add.
Apparently not. In the chair's eyes, I have nothing to offer.
Good, thank you very much. Okay, if there's no other member of the public who would like to speak for or against the application? All right, Bob, I think we can get a motion.
Well, let me just say one thing with regard to what the Cape Cod Commission guidance says in two spots, one from 1992 and one from 2003, is relocation of a historic building should be considered a substantial alteration if the building has not been previously moved, which it hasn't, and if the move will change the building's relationship to other elements of the property. And I think Ted has addressed that. It's still going to be the essential triangular shape, so it does not fall within the Cape Cod Commission guidelines for referral. So,
Very good.
on that note, I will move with regard to the Cape Cod Commission that the Historical Commission confirms that the structure located at 784 Orleans Road is a contributing structure in the National Historic Register District.
A second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay. Bob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Steph,
Yes,
Sandy,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay.
Part number 2 of the Cape Cod Commission, I move the Chatham Historical Commission finds the materials presented this date showing that the proposed alterations do not constitute a substantial alteration to a contributing structure located in the National Historic Register District, and therefore referral to the Cape Cod Commission for review is not necessary.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other comments? Bob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Steph,
Yes,
Sandy,
Yes.
sorry, and chair votes yes. So we got now
Chapter
158?
Chapter 158, I move the Chatham Historical Commission finds that the structure located at 784 Orleans Road is historically significant because it is a whole or in part 75 years old or more and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you very much. Any other comments? Bob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Steph,
yes,
Sandy,
Yes.
chair votes yes.
All right, number 2 on Chapter 158, the Chatham Historical Commission finds the proposed work to be done dated July 24th, 2024 will not materially diminish the historic significance of the structure, and therefore the commission does not impose a demolition delay.
Second, please.
second,
Thank you very much, Steph. Okay, no other comments? Bob,
Yes.
Steve,
Yes.
Nancy,
Yes.
Steph?
yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
Chair votes yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Why don't you stick around a second? We're going to be talking around something on the agenda under old business, which is an area which you might shed some light. Okay? Thank you very much. All right. We have just a couple of quick items I want to note in terms of old business. From our previous discussion relative to the update, new Form Bs and new Form As and updating the previous ones, I've been in touch with Eric Dre, our preservation consultant, ask him for a more definitive proposal and coordinate that with our executive director, Katie Donovan, to hopefully find some funding and to proceed with that. So that's an area that I'm working on with Christina's cooperation, and we'll hopefully get that moving along sometime probably next year, given how things move. I was in contact again with PAL, Holly Herbster, from on the National Register eligibility request for the Ann and William Nickerson homestead, and she's still on track for results of that report in October, which would be great, and then we hopefully would then submit it to Mass Historic and get a determination on that. The third item on here, which something we've been carrying for a long time, is our boathouse, Chatham's boathouse, the U.S. Coast Guard boathouse, and its adaptive reuse as an upweller. There's been a lot of activity on that. If you folks have been watching the select board meetings, in fact, the last one, I believe the town was in looking at reviewing of the actual cost to see if there was a way to further hone in on a better number. But subsequent to that, if I understand it, and maybe Ted, you can help me here, because I wasn't attending the whole meeting, the select board made a decision at the request of the Bob Davis and the Shellfish to have a special town meeting. Is that what's going on?
Correct. Following the failure of passage of the two-thirds annual town meeting, there obviously was, for those that supported the project, a lot of concern of, the next steps and what could or should be done. As you may recall, during upcoming to the town meeting as well as at town meeting, some of the issues were the packaging of multi-waterfront projects into a single package. Some people thought it was absolutely the best way to approach. Others thought looking at individual projects was a better approach. The Shellfish Advisory Committee, the South Coastal Harbor Plan Committee took a position that they agreed that looking at the project separately was a good idea. And then the Shellfish Advisory Committee likewise felt, let's look at it separately, and in addition recommended to the select board about pursuing a special town meeting. So based on that request from the Shellfish Advisory Committee, the board held a meeting just recently and voted a split decision, frankly, a 3-2, not necessarily the negative decisions, I don't believe, were necessarily in opposition of the project. They were more concerned about the process of holding a special. But nonetheless, there is now a special town meeting scheduled for September 16th, I think.
Yeah, I heard the 16th. Is that?
I believe it's the 16th.
And that's a firm date?
I believe, yes. As
Okay.
far as I'm aware, that is the firm date.
All right. Well,
And
thank you
it
very
will
much.
be, at least at this point, I believe, a single topic special for the revote of the, a bond issue still requires a 2/3 vote, with an ask at this point of $4 million for completion of the renovations to prepare the site, meaning the piers and floats that were part of the original site plan, and then presumably the return and repurposing of the boathouse as the Shellfish Upweller.
All right, well, thank you very much. From the Historical Commission's point of view, and one of the reasons I continue to carry it under old business is, a couple of years ago, when it first started, we had attempted to get the boathouse listed on the National Register and ask Mass Historic to determine its eligibility. There was a question of whether or not we should or should not submit that form. We updated our records, the so-called Mass Historical Commission Form B, but we hesitated to submit it to Mass Historic relative to the fact that everything was not transit, well,
Right.
that's a good word. It was not in transit, it's up and down,
Right.
whether or not it was coming back or not. So we were kind of hoping, at least I personally, at least as chair, and hopefully the rest of the commission, that when it did come back, we would then have a very good reason to submit it to Mass Historic to determine, in fact, it is in fact eligible for National Registered listing, which is similar to the other boathouses, the one in Mementure and the one on Nantucket, which also have that jurisdiction. And, and I kid around a lot, we give away a lot of our historic stuff and would like to not give this one away. So anyway, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that brief update.
Sure. And that, just to expand on that, that was also my understanding that, if it were deemed appropriate, the timing was important because you don't want to go that route if it's still sitting in Quincy in a parking lot.
Right.
You want to wait till it's actually here in Chatham and it's in essence, a done deal. It's here. So that was really, I think, one of the holdups of not pursuing it on an
So
earlier
we could
time.
call it the Chatham U.S. Coast Guard, rather than the in transit or the
Right,
Quincy U.S. boat. All
Right.
right, well, thank you very much, Ted.
sure.
Any other comments or questions on that issue? No? Okay. Relative to the so-called chairman's report, I guess, anything new on the demolition delays? Same old, huh? Bridge Street is the one that bothers me the most, 322 Bridge Street. There's no action on that property, as far as you know.
Something might come soon, but nothing yet.
Yeah, that is a really historic piece of property. I think it's 17-something, that 322 Bridge Street, and luckily they withdraw their plans to demolish it, so hopefully we can get that thing saved in some way. The only other item, or two items, I'm going to jump ahead to Monomoy Theater. I'm aware that the pending legal action on that for the zoning element of whether or not they're going to proceed with the restoration of the Washington Taylor House and then the Monomoy Theater, the summary, not the summary, the final presentation to the court is actually scheduled for Monday, the 19th. And from what the word I got back is hopefully there'll be some decision within 30 days on what's happening with the zoning. And the decision on the zoning is then the developer makes his decision how he's going to proceed to develop that property and hopefully at some particular point include the restoration of the Washington Taylor House as well as the theater property. So things are kind of up in the air with that one. Last but not least, in your application, and this is for information only, really should not have any real discussion because it's inappropriate for us to discuss it, other than the fact that the HBDC is making us aware that there's an application to demolish 1620 Main Street. I guess it's one of the Harding houses. So the only comment I would make is I intend to have a conversation with the HBDC on the purpose of their form, which requires the chairman of the Historical Commission to acknowledge that there is something going on. And, you know, they want my initials, but what does it mean? And so I think we all can agree. What does it mean? Have any idea?
Just that you were made aware that a historic structure is coming down, but it is not in your jurisdiction. But
Right.
you are aware. It's just a courtesy,
It's a courtesy.
I believe so.
Okay. I'm aware that they're going to demolish the building. Thank you very much. Okay. Anybody have anything else they'd like to add or delete from the meeting?
I have a question. Are
Yes,
we
sure.
no longer doing demolition by neglect?
No, that's not true.
So that should be under the issues on hold?
You weren't here to listen to me. Yes, I'm sorry. We met the new,
Town planner.
I'm sorry?
Town planner.
We met the new, is principal planner, is that her name, or town planner?
She's the town planner.
Okay, new title. The new town planner, Christine O'Grady. I got it right, son of a gun. She's on board. She's, it's still, trying to figure out what's going on. And in conversations with her and with Katie, it's one of the priorities when she gets set, and she's dealing with some zoning things, so she's trying to dust off the file and find out what we've done in the past, and then we'll proceed. I believe the bottom line of how we felt we should proceed with, now I forgot her name, the previous planner.
Ryan Christenberry.
Right. We felt that the way to proceed, and I guess looking at Nancy, because new person on board, we generally agreed that was the funnies. We generally agreed that what we were going to do was not generate a new bylaw, that would be difficult. The best way to proceed would to take the chapter 158 and put information or changes to chapter 158 would be a better way to proceed. And we tended to agree that would be the way to proceed, except we have to do the work. So, the previous planner knew what she was going to do. She looked at many other communities in the state to see what they're doing and then provide some feedback to us on how we could proceed. And we would begin the process. The last two changes we made to the bylaw, it took us almost 2 years to do it. It takes time because you have to go to all the boards and all the commissions, but we wanted to at least start the process.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Yes.
that's valuable. And also, just to your point, to maybe keep it on the list of issues on hold, so it is something we just keep, it's just not listed. I think that's,
Yeah, I guess we
Thing that
took it off
prompted your
hold because
question.
it's no longer on hold. We're
Oh.
working it,
oh, okay.
okay?
Awesome.
And
Okay.
so I guess what we'll do, just a good point, we'll put it on
The chairman's report.
old
maybe?
business, I guess.
Or old bu- okay.
And because this way we'll have it there, that
Yeah.
we'll ask for a report.
Sounds good.
And thank you very much for pointing it out, and Christine will do that. And we'll also touch base with Christine to see what's happening and how she wants to proceed. Okay, anything else? All right, let's call it a day, or call it a morning. Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second, please.
Second.
Thank you. Bob?
Yes.
Steve? Yes. Nancy?
Yes.
Steph?
Yes.
Sandy?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Thanks much. See you guys on the 3rd.